So we've already explained some of the tools we would use, ranging from Gundam markers to Real Touch to panel washes, Games Workshop washes, oil colours, the lot really, and also some of the very basic tools you're going to need, such as a palette and some Q-tips and some tissue paper. So now we'll just do a little demo on how I would go about doing these kind of panel lines. So we're using this piece here as a demo. So this piece is of course a Sinanju's arm, and really all it's had is a pre-shaded base coat, the colour, and as well as a post shading, but as you can see here, no panel lining, no edge highlighting, no panel lines here. In fact, I haven't even got some paint here, but you won't see that, so it doesn't really matter. But I can definitely use this to serve the purpose of showing you how to do some panel lining. So let's put that down and get on with it. So this is my own pre-mixed solution, so we're just going to get some of that and use some of these dropper bottles. So I'm just going to put a very tiny bit into my palette. And you'll be surprised to know that you really don't use very much at all, so I'm just going to put a couple of drops in there. And we're ready. So basically, let's just move the camera a little bit, sorry. Okay, so basically here you can, I don't know if you can see, but this is actually a palette of just water, and it's always a good idea when you're using any paintbrush to just basically wet the brush a little bit, and then we can get the brush going really. So you never really want to start off from a dry brush, because what happens is, whether you're using paints or washes or anything, then with a dry brush it just draws up a little bit too much of the actual of the paint that you're using, so it's you don't get the control or flow that you'd really want. So I'm just going to put this back onto the plain background. Alright, so excuse me. Alright, so let's just do a very quick demo of the most basic of panel lines, such as all this sort of stuff. So you really, the way you would do it with a Gundam marker is kind of one way, but this is another. So you just, you don't really need to be very precise with this. You just, the way I do it is to, actually this mixture isn't very runny, so it's not the easiest way of showing you guys, but I'm just finding it very difficult to see what I'm doing in front of a camera, so just bear with me. But that's what we've got so far. Hopefully you can see that. So I hope you can tell I'm not being careful at all, because I know that this paint that I'm using, sorry, this wash that I'm using right here is completely water soluble, so it does not bother me in the slightest that it's looking this bad. Although normally if I wasn't doing this in front of the camera, then I'd be a bit more careful than that. So I hope you can see there that it's all running through more or less by capillary action, and all I'm going to do is just let it sit. And the solution I use, normally it would dry very quickly if this was if there was a bit more temperature. It's a little bit cold right now, but so we'll just see if this dries in time for this video. If not, I'll just fast forward and do a bit of a jump cut for you guys. But that is really all there is to it. So I know it looks a bit scary and it looks completely horrific right now, but trust me, this all turns out fine in a little bit when we come to do the tidy up. So don't overdo this, by the way. Don't try and, same thing with the actual airbrushing. Don't try and do it all in one go. So if you find it doesn't stick because your paint's a little bit, so your wash is a little bit too runny, then that's probably the right thing to do actually. So you want it, so if it doesn't quite stick, then do a little bit, let it dry, go back in, do a little bit more, and keep building it up that way. So same thing with these. It's just a little dab here and a little dab right there. And yes, I know it looks way too much, but trust me, when it dries it'll be a lot of that will evaporate, so no worries there. So I guess a lot of this video is more or less, it's easy to explain I guess, and even easier to show, but it's really just to show you to not be afraid, because you really do not have to be precise like this. You don't have to make sure you're going right in the middle. I mean, I could draw all over this if I want to. It really doesn't matter. So just don't be afraid. I know first time around it's all you want to be perfect and all that, but really once you get a bit more experience under your belt, then you kind of come out of that mentality. So these are the bits I was explaining in the previous videos. So again, it might be a bit tricky for me to do on camera, but I'll give it a go. So really you're just trying to get it to adhere to the actual gap, the actual ridge that goes all the way around. So, and in this case, because this is such a smooth surface that you can see, I've completely overkilled this with the gloss. But I will just hold this like this just to let it sit, because if I start moving it off an angle, then the wash will want to drip away from the ridge. So in this case, where it's not very well defined, not like here where there's an actual ridge, then I'll just hold this for a little bit to let it settle in. So we'll move on to the other side. And remember, it's not too much of a problem if you put too much on. So that is a little bit too much, but actually way too much, but you'll see in a bit it really doesn't matter. So whilst I'm waiting for these, I'll go back over here and I'll do a little bit more. And I hope you can see here, that was only 3 drops out of my dropper bottle, but I'm basically hardly using any of this stuff. So we're going to go back in and make sure it just flows in properly. Alright, and that is pretty much all there is to it. This is going to take a little bit to dry, some of the big pieces I've been doing. But a little tip actually is, I don't know if you can see the fingers here, but they come out really good if you just give it an overall wash as well. So here you really don't have to be at all careful. Just brush it all on. And let the actual contours work to your effect and let gravity do its thing. So basically you're effectively brushing on a very light transparent layer of black, and then we're going to take it all off again, and it's going to leave only the dark parts in the crevices that we want. So hopefully you can see that. I know the lighting is not too great at this angle, but it's how I've got to have it so I can see what I'm doing. But let me just put the paintbrush down for a second. By the way, when you're done, always make sure to just wash your paintbrush out as soon as you can. So you really want to make an effort to actually look after your brushes so you're not always having to buy new ones. And really that's all it takes. As soon as you're done, just give it a bit of water, and assuming you're using water-based paints, of course. Alright. So I'm just going to go in some detail and show you how this looks right now. So I hope you can see that it's very messy. You can see here where it's really ran away from the piece, but that's okay. We'll deal with that in a little bit. And that's how it's looking right now. So I'm going to let this all dry off a little bit, and it should only take about 15 minutes or so, and then we'll come right back and we'll tidy it all up.